Testing. Oh, there we are. I'm supposed to stand on the X and speak. We'll have a moment of sort of deer in the headlights. I can't really see you, but I hope you're enjoying your dinner. As they said so kindly, I was one of the founding members of ALCERECO. Another founding member is sitting over there. If you look at the back of the business card, it says something like Specialists in Advanced Materials. And that's going to be one of the themes of the talk tonight. We're going to talk about a very advanced material. So advanced it's not really in anything yet, but we're working on that. ALCERECO is, as you can see in the fine print, it says a graphoid company. And graphoid is kind of our parent. Graphoid is in the business of making products, making materials, making money using this new wonder material called graphene. Some of you may have heard of it. It's been in the New Yorker. It was in, there was a nice article in the Star, I believe, last weekend. We're, I don't know, pushing back the frontiers of science. It's all good stuff. Everyone's having a good time. And I'm here to tell you a bit about that. Over on the, I guess on your left, is Focus Graphite. Focus Graphite is a company that has been working feverishly to produce the precursor that you use to make graphene. So this little triumvirate of companies is trying to innovate, trying to push back science, push forward science. All that good stuff that everyone tells you is so wonderful in science school. Away we go. I'm going to push a button just to see what happens. Nothing happened. Aha! Oops! That, ladies and gentlemen, is a cartoon representation of graphene. What is graphene? It is a single layer of carbon atoms. Technically, it could extend forever, but one of its charms is all of these little sticks here are fairly strong bonds. And there are weak bonds going vertically that interact with the next layer. If you stack enough of those, you have graphene. You can make pencils. Ooh, my thing's falling apart. You can make pencils. You can do all sorts of stuff with graphite. Most of it boring. And the trick is to separate down to a single layer and then use that single layer for something. Why would you want to do that? Well, the single layer is incredibly strong. Depending on who you talk to, it's 100 times, 180 times, 200 times, 80 times stronger than steel. What does that mean? Well, a single layer is very strong. What can you do with a single layer? Not much, because a single layer is very, very thin. In fact, if you take 2 grams of this material and spread it out as far as it would go, you would cover roughly 1,000 square meters of material. It's very strong, but it's not very thick. And making devices, making a product, making money using this material is difficult. It's not difficult to make the material itself. 2 guys in Manchester got a Nobel Prize in Physics for pulling apart graphite using Scotch tape till they got down to what they could demonstrate was a single layer. That's kind of the myth that graphene was invented in 2004. The reality is people were experimenting with it much earlier. We just didn't really know what it was. The analytical science and the detection science had to catch up with very simple chemistry. These are not complex molecules, but they are very interesting. Okay, I talked about strength. We can also talk a bit about other properties. There's a floating cloud of electrons above and below that little thing. Conducts electricity fantastically well. Again, very thin, but interesting properties. Can you do something with that? We're going to find out. Einstein teaches us that if you can conduct electricity, you also conduct heat. Graphene has incredibly high thermal conductivity. Very useful in, say, a cell phone. Somebody might have a cell phone in the audience. There is a layer of stuff in the cell phone that allows you to even out the hot and cold points. Otherwise, all sorts of funny things would happen. Graphene would be an ideal material for that. So let's just have a quick look at what we make graphene out of. This is, in fact, there are 3 pictures. They're all kind of pretty, eh? Doesn't that look kind of space age? Real 21st century. These are not pictures of graphene. These are pictures of graphite, but you can see it's a bit like a book. Oh, I've got a button here. There we are. It's a bit like a book or a deck of cards, and you can peel off the layers. The layers will actually fold over there like some kind of Dali watch. Sorry, I gotta watch where I'm pointing that. Woo! Hello. Well, what happened to my graphene? Not to worry, oh, there we are, there's me. There we are, there's another one. This one shows you better the wafers. Thank you, Anne, for the nice picture that they just saw. Lost my train of thought. Anyway, that's the sort of the plus and minus of graphene. It's fairly easy to make. We've been working on making it for a couple of years. Now the hard part is to make stuff with it. Graphene itself isn't much use if you can't use it for something useful and use it for something that you can sell to somebody else. And that is the capitalist gold standard, if you will. You've got to sell it to somebody. Give us a purchase order and we'll do it. So if I go back to these 3 companies, oops, where are we? There we are. Focus Graphite is a public company. Its ambition is to sell graphene or graphite. Graphoid is a private company. Its ambition is to sell not graphene, but products containing graphene. And it's a business strategy that I think has legs. There's no point in just selling people graphene and hope they make something of it. We want to sell products. Somebody mentioned fishing rods to me earlier this evening. Yeah, maybe there'll be a fishing rod with graphene as a reinforcing agent. More likely, we will exploit graphene for its surface properties. One of its charms is it repels water, loves to repel water. Would be an ideal material for, say, coating a glass surface. The water would not wet the surface, it would simply bead and fall off. Windows would stay cleaner longer. You wouldn't get as much dust sticking to it. And that's probably the kind of product you're going to see. Are you going to see it tomorrow? No. Are you going to see it next quarter? We hope so. We have a plan to do that. And sort of watch this space. Now, my real reason to wanting to come and talk to you is not so much about graphene, but it is, if you will, a case study for innovation itself. When the Novellis used to own a lab up at the top of the Princess Street here, which they abandoned. I was, in fact, sitting in a bar in Moscow. I don't know why bars in Moscow has this effect on people, but I had one of those eureka moments where it suddenly struck me, somebody should buy that place and turn it into a really hotshot research center in materials science. A eureka moment. And if you're talking about innovation and science and technology, these eureka moments are really important, and it'd be really nice to bottle it, to be able to say, you know, if we had enough of these, we could solve all the world's problems. You know, if you think back to, say, let's go back to 250 BC, and there's our Archimedes sitting in his bathtub. He's got a problem he has to solve. He's sitting there, and suddenly the solution leaps at him. What does he do? He jumps up, shouts, "Eureka!" and runs naked through the streets of Syracuse. This is in Greece, of course, not Syracuse, New York. And that sort of eureka moment is now famous. If you've had eureka moments, you know that they're very satisfying. You had a problem, there was a sudden release. It's probably not quite orgasmic, but it's maybe second best. And if you can repeat that over and over again with a whole crowd of people, then progress is made. And that progress we call, or at least I try to call, innovation. And it starts with one person having an idea, but that's not the hard part. Having ideas is easy. You then have to invoke a whole series of teams. Innovation is unfortunately a team sport. The guy sitting in his garage inventing stuff, it's not quite a myth, but it's pretty close. And so let's have a look at what it takes to get an innovation like this off the ground. The wheel, was invented about 1,000 years before it became accepted. Why did it take 1,000 years for the wheel to become accepted? In fact, it never made it to North America until 500 years ago. And the answer is, if you made a wheeled vehicle back in the good old days, and it was obviously better than the alternatives, which were carrying the stuff on your back, your neighbor would probably steal it. And there's nothing like not seeing the fruits of your labor to kind of dampen the enthusiasm for innovation. And so one of the first things you've got to have if you're going to innovate is call it a stable environment, call it the rule of law. Oh my goodness, we've invoked lawyers. Do you really need lawyers to innovate? Well, sadly, yes. We have a lawyer in our company. We have a couple. It's part of the game is keeping ownership separate and what have you. So you need lawyers. You need accountants. Oh dear. We brought into accountants because you're interested in money. You're trying to take an investor's dollar to fund somebody's idea to make the world a better place. You've got a nice stable environment. Why would anybody innovate? Well, you need that itch. There has to be something wrong that we can fix. And that itch can take many forms, but it has to be there. And the last thing you need is kind of a puddle of resources. That's what I call a puddle of resources. The resources could be money, but more often it's people, it's materials. How do you get puddles of resources? Large companies go to business is one way. When Nortel kind of collapsed, all those guys working at Nortel went and started little semiconductor companies. And now Ottawa is kind of a Silicon Valley North. If you want to really create puddles of resources, there's nothing better than a little war to free up change in power, structure, what have you. Suddenly there are people that no longer are necessarily employed, and they tend to start stuff. They tend to innovate. They tend to make things better. And if you want to actually manage innovation. Now we've got managers on top of the accountants and the lawyers. We're starting to look like a research center. And that is really kind of the point I wanted to make. When we started ALCERECO, the ambition was to acquire that puddle of resources, which was a building full of equipment, and about 20 or 30 people who had an immense amount of expertise. And we pulled it together and kind of I'd like to say it was efficient and well thought out, but It was messy, but it's come together to the point where Graphoid came to town, looked around, and liked what they saw, and bought into it. People are surprised when I say, yes, we're doing research in graphene here in Kingston, because Kingston is not thought of as a hotbed of innovation. But in fact, if you look at the history of innovation in Kingston, it's quite rich. The beer can wasn't invented here, but it was perfected. The research center, both at Alcan and there's another large one at Dupont, have all generated, all sorts of innovative materials science. And why in Kingston? I don't know. People like to live here. I like to live here. Queen's University, for instance, is full of bright, sophisticated people who you can call up and say, I have this problem. Have you got a eureka moment for me? And stuff happens. You don't see it in the newspaper, but it happens. And I think we're better for it. I'm going to scroll back down. Oh, hello. Yeah, okay, wrong button. There we are. And I'm going to end with, yes, this puppy dog. That was supposed to be the ending. Kind of spoiled the punchline, but there we are. Where we take this in the next year is probably very important. And I encourage people in the room who don't know us, but should know us, to come and say hello. Because this, as I say, is a team sport. We're dragging resources from all over the community. And we'd like to see it succeed in the short term. We'd also like to see it succeed in the long term. So as I say, watch this spot and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.